What if your next barber's visit looked more like a horror movie? No anesthesia, no sterilization, no actual training, just a sharp blade, a bucket for blood, and a man called Barber who swears he knows what he's doing. Tonight, we're going back to a time when medicine was madness, and the cure might kill you faster than the disease. Forget what you learned in school. Medieval healthcare wasn't about healing. It was about surviving the healer. Leeches, hot irons, drilling into your skull to let the demons out, and if you cried out in pain, you were probably next in line for a good bleeding. So, before we crack open the barber's toolkit, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, but only if you've got the stomach for the raw, grim, and absolutely insane truth, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and what time it is. I always love seeing how far this weird little corner of the internet reaches. Now, close your eyes, grit your teeth, and pray it's not your turn in the chair, because you've just stepped into the 14th century. And in this world, the barber is God, or the Grim Reaper, sometimes both. You are here, in a quiet place, a safe place, a dimly glowing room where the hum of modern life fades into something older, softer, stranger. You have found your way to a story, not the kind that shouts or demands your attention. No. This story speaks in murmurs, in the rustle of linen, in the crackle of wood under a pot, in the sigh of wind through a wooden shutter that never quite closes. Tonight, I will take you somewhere old, somewhere where health was not comfort, where healing did not always soothe, where the man who cut your hair might also cut your skin, and not always with clean hands. Let yourself drift with me, back to a world that believed in balance, of humors, of heat and cold, of wet and dry. A world where sickness was not an invader, but a shift, a sign, a spiritual tremor that needed setting right. And it was often the barber, of all people, who held the blade, not just for beards or sideburns, but for veins, for pustules, for skulls. Do not be afraid. This is not a horror. This is not even a warning. This is just the way things were. And tonight, we do not judge. We only wander, through fog, through whispers, through corridors that smell of lavender and lye and something coppery that never quite fades from the wooden basin. Try, if you can, to imagine the world as it was. Dirt floors swept clean with bundles of twigs. Wool cloaks steaming faintly from rain. A cold coin pressed into a chapped palm. A chair that creaks under your weight. The worn leather cool and strangely comforting against your skin. A candle flickers. The barber does not smile. He does not need to. He has done this before. He sharpens his blade on a strap of old hide. You watch, and you wait, but not yet. Not quite yet. First, you must learn to breathe in the rhythm of the past. It is slower here, softer. It is allowed to take its time. You are allowed to take your time. Your body can loosen. Your shoulders can fall. There will be no rush tonight, no urgency, no surprise. Only the sound of history, spoken low and slow, made gentle enough to fall asleep beside. Yes, you may fall asleep while listening, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, it is welcome. You are not expected to stay awake through it all. You do not need to keep track of time, or facts, or names. You do not need to be vigilant. I will stay with you, and the story will unfold, like fog lifting slowly from a field, revealing the strange silhouettes that once walked the same earth as you do now. Tonight, you will not simply learn about medieval barbers. You will meet them. You will smell their tinctures and boiled bones. You will feel the rough wood of the doorframe they lean against. You will hear the distant bell that signals the closing of the apothecary, or the weeping of a widow waiting for the barber to finish his final task. You may feel a strange ache as the story moves on. Not fear, not really, but a kind of empathy, a recognition that the people of that time, for all their brutal remedies and painful customs, wanted the same things we do now, to feel better, to stop hurting, to be whole. So, take a breath, and then another. Let the lights dim in your imagination. Let the walls change. Let the ceiling above you vanish into timber beams and thatch. Let your soft bed turn slowly into a hard cot stuffed with straw and sheep's wool. Let the world reshape itself around you. Slowly, quietly, carefully. Because now the day begins. Are you ready to try surviving a full day? Not in your world, but in theirs. Let us begin. You are not quite sure when you fell asleep. Perhaps it was some time after the flicker of the candle began to blur. Or perhaps it was when the hush of the voice grew softer than the ticking of the clock in your room. Or maybe you did not fall asleep at all. Maybe the world simply changed while your eyes were still open. It begins with a shift in weight. Your body no longer feels like it rests on something familiar. The mattress is gone, and in its place is something uneven. It crunches faintly as you stir. Straw. Coarse, dry straw beneath a thin sheet of linen that smells faintly of smoke and thyme and something earthier. The must of old thatch and the slow exhale of soil. A chill brushes across your cheek, not sharp but persistent, the kind of cold that slips through cracks in a wall you cannot see. The light that reaches your eyes is gray, muted, filtered through something, cloth, perhaps, or the dusty gaps in shuttered wood. It is morning, but not your morning. You open your eyes. The room is small, not more than a few paces across. The walls are wattle and daub, wooden beams and filled with a pale, cracked plaster. The beams above your head are low and dark with smoke, as though the years have stained them in soot and silence. From somewhere behind the far wall, you hear a soft clucking. Chickens, close enough to feel like they are part of the house itself. There is no hum of electricity, no distant whir of cars, no screen's soft glow. Only the sound of fire, not burning, but smoldering, a red breath beneath the ashes in the hearth across the room, and the faint rustle of something stirring outside, a cart's wheel creaking over frozen mud. Your feet find the floor. It is cold, hard-packed earth, covered in rushes that have not been changed in days, or perhaps longer. They crackle underfoot, carrying with them the subtle scent of herbs scattered within, lavender and fennel, intended to ward off insects, or perhaps just to soften the smell of living. A wooden basin waits in the corner, beside a pewter pitcher filled halfway with water gone bracingly cold in the night. You touch it, and it shocks your skin awake. There is no soap, not really, just a cloth that smells of vinegar and rain. You splash the water on your face. The cold blooms through you like a bell tolling from the inside out. There is a tunic folded neatly on a wooden chest, coarse linen, the color of ash, and a belt of braided leather beside it. As you pull the tunic over your head, it itches, not cruelly, but insistently. The cloth is rough, made from flax grown in soil not far from here, and spun by someone whose hands remember every knot. Over the tunic, a woolen overtunic is waiting, darker, heavier. It smells like sheep and fire and open air. When you fasten the belt, you feel your waist drawn in slightly, not uncomfortably but snugly, like you are being reminded that this world fits differently. The boots are worn leather, stiff at the edges, but softened where the heel presses in. As you step to the doorway, your hand meets the wood of the lintel above. It is low. People were shorter here, or perhaps buildings simply crouched lower to keep their warmth. The latch creaks as you lift it, and the door opens not with a swing, but with a push. The hinges groan a little, tired and honest. Outside, the world breathes fog. The sky is a pale blanket of clouds, and the fields beyond the cottages are silver. with morning frost. Smoke rises thinly from several thatched roofs, curling in lazy spirals that vanish into the pale air. You smell earth, real earth, not the smell of a potted plant, but the deep, slow scent of soil and dung and frozen leaves. The village is waking slowly. A dog barks once, then falls quiet. A woman, wrapped in a cloak of faded blue, carries a pail of water. With both hands, her breath visible in front of her like a veil. There is no rush, no alarm. The morning is slow by design. You feel your own breath moving in and out like you are part of the landscape. You walk. The ground is uneven beneath your feet, cobbles in places but mostly packed mud, ridged with wheel marks and the traces of boots. To your right, a young boy in a woolen cap is feeding hens. His fingers are red with cold. He nods at you, not with any urgency, but as one might nod to a bird flying by, gently with acknowledgement, but not alarm. The village barber's shop is not far. It is not a building of grand signs or wide windows, just a cottage like the others, but with a pole outside, white with red spirals, the colors slightly faded by sun and rain. A symbol not of style, but of something older, something bloodier. You pause at the door. The chill of the morning clings to you. Somewhere behind that door, a blade is being readied. Not for fashion, for healing, in the way this world understands it. You are not ready yet, but you are getting closer. Take another breath. Feel the way your lungs draw in the cold. Let your shoulders fall. Let the village settle around you like a cloak. You are no longer a visitor. You are here. You belong. To this day now, and it is just beginning. The morning lingers gray and still, and as you walk further into the village you begin to notice not just the people, but what they wear. How their clothing speaks in soft rustles and heavy folds, in faded colors and practical warmth. In this world, your body is not dressed for expression, it is dressed for survival, and everything upon it has been touched by hand. The tunic against your skin is woven from linen, the fibers long and stubborn. You can feel the grain of it with every movement, not uncomfortable, but ever present. A reminder that comfort was not the measure of quality. Above the linen, your over-tunic of wool insulates you with a quiet weight. It is not dyed with brilliance, but holds the gentle hues of the earth, dull brown, ashy gray, or the soft olive of nettles boiled into pigment. The colors are humble, like the soil they sprang from, and that is no accident. Color is expensive, reserved for those who need to be seen. Some around you wear heavier cloaks, clasped at the shoulder with bone or simple metal pins. The wool in those cloaks is thick with lanolin, the natural oil that resists water and seals in warmth. You can smell it faintly as you pass, the scent of animal, of fields, of long days in the rain. Some hoods are attached, others separate, pulled up and tied with a cord when the wind begins to bite. You notice their hands, work-worn, chapped, nails short and rimmed with soil. Rings are few, mostly among the older women. Simple bands of brass, sometimes engraved with tiny patterns worn nearly smooth by time. Jewelry, when worn, is light and often homemade. Strips of woven thread. A pendant carved from horn. The luxury of the gentry is far removed from this path. Hair, too, is purposeful. Men wear it shorter, not styled but kept out of the way, their beards trimmed if not always neat. Women's hair is more carefully arranged, tucked beneath coifs or kerchiefs. Unmarried girls may wear their hair in braids, the strands tied with colored string if the family can spare the dye. But a woman's hair, once wed, is rarely seen. Modesty is its own kind of armor. Boots are of leather, stiff but molded with time. Some are patched with care, others left to weather. There are no heels, no buckles, no stitching for flair. Just seams that hold and soles that survive the mud. As you walk, you become aware of how these clothes shape your movement. They restrict slightly, they warm unevenly, but they belong to the rhythm of this world. You brush your fingers across the wool at your chest, and it is rough but steady, like the life you must now live. You are dressed not to impress, but to endure. And that is enough. The air holds stillness, not just in sound, but in posture. Here, movement has meaning. Every gesture, every glance, every bow of the head has its place. As you pass through the village, your body becomes more than a vessel. It becomes a language, and if you do not know how to speak it, you may be noticed. Or worse, you may be remembered. When you first meet someone on the road, you lower your gaze slightly. Not in fear, but in quiet acknowledgement. Eye contact is not absent, but brief. A soft flicker, not a stare. The longer you linger with your eyes, the more weight you place on the interaction. And in this world, too much weight can break even a simple morning greeting. A small nod is polite. Not a deep dip of the head, unless the one you face wears better cloth than you, or walks with the straight back of someone used to being obeyed. Then you bow, not extravagantly, just enough to show that you understand the shape of things, the invisible ladder you both stand on and your place upon it. When you speak, your voice is low, calm, and careful. Not because you fear a mistake, but because conversation is a kind of dance, and one misstep can echo longer than you intend. You do not shout, you do not interrupt. You wait your turn, and when someone older speaks, you listen, even if the words drift like ash on the wind. Gestures are small. A hand to the chest can mean many things: gratitude, apology, even greeting. But a hand too quickly raised, too wide in its motion, can startle, offend, or call unwanted attention. When you share space, in the church, at the table, near the you make yourself smaller. Your hands fold gently in front of you. Your back remains straight but never rigid. You do not sprawl. You do not display ease where none has been earned. At the table, if you are invited, you wait. Bread is not broken until the host gives permission. Salt, precious and rare, is never wasted. You use your right hand for eating and your left only. When no one is watching, elbows stay low, voices stay low. Conversation flows like a stream, slow, steady, and easily disturbed. To forget these things is not just impolite. It is dangerous. Your rudeness marks you as strange. Strange marks you as suspect. And to be suspect in this world is to be remembered. For the wrong reasons, so you bow, you nod, you wait your turn. You shape your body into the outline of humility, and slowly, you begin to vanish into the world around you, like smoke from a hearth swallowed by air. The morning unfolds without hurry. Life in this world is not loud, but it is constant, and it is shaped deeply and thoroughly by who you are perceived to be. Your body, your voice, your name. These things determine not only your path, but also the boundaries you may never cross. If you are born a woman, your days begin near the hearth and tend to remain there. The fire is your center, not merely for warmth, but for nourishment, for craft, for care. You rise early to stoke it, to stir the ashes, to bring water from the well and knead dough with slow, steady hands. The home is not only your duty, it is your world. And within it, you hold both strength and silence. You spin thread, mend wool, press herbs into salves that might soothe a child's fever. You watch the door, the windows, the quiet corners where dust gathers. You know the rhythms of others, needs before they are spoken. You rarely travel far alone, not because you cannot, but because a woman alone raises questions. Questions raise suspicion. Suspicion raises danger. If you are a man, your tasks bend toward the field, the forge, the cart or the blade. You rise when the light is still faint, and you carry tools that smell of earth and iron and sweat. Your labor is visible. It leaves your hands calloused and your back bowed. You may be taught letters if your family has means, but often your education is the rhythm of hooves and harvests. You speak louder, walk farther, bargain at market, train with weapons if your class allows. You may not govern unless birth grants you a title, but you are allowed to speak of things beyond your fence. You may fail without disgrace. You may shout without shame. Children, too, are sorted early. Little girls are taught the softness of stitch and spoon, while boys are handed wooden tools or made to follow their fathers and mimic every motion. Play is brief, always watched, and always waited with preparation for what comes next. Marriage is not always love. It is duty. It is alliance. It is survival. And though some find joy in it, others simply find purpose. The woman tends to the home. The man provides for it. And in this careful symmetry, the days pass. Not always kind, not always cruel, but always shaped by lines that are rarely erased. You walk now through a world that is not equal. It never claimed to be. Here, every step you take, every word you speak, every place you are allowed to stand is shaped by a ladder, and your rung is fixed from birth. There are those who rule and those who kneel, those who command, and those who wait until spoken to. At the top, almost out of sight, is the monarch, a figure you will likely never meet, but whose presence bends the world around you like wind warping the branches of a tree. The king, or the queen, is anointed not just by bloodline, but by God's will, or so you are told. Their power is both political and sacred, and their reach extends into every village, every tithe, every tax collected at the chapel steps. Beneath, the crown, the nobles, lords and ladies whose names are stitched into land and law. They ride horses with silken bridles. Their homes rise above yours in stone and timber. They do not work the soil. They own it. And when you see them pass, you bow your head, whether you believe in their holiness or not. It is not piety. It is preservation. Then the clergy, monks, friars, bishops. Their power is more ethereal, but no less real. They speak in Latin, in sermons, in script. They hold knowledge like a blade held close, and it is their hands that write the rules of salvation, rules you are too poor to read, but too fearful to ignore. Confession is not just ritual. It is surveillance, wrapped in absolution, and beneath them all, the vast weight of the common folk, peasants, villains, tradesmen, laborers. You work, you carry, you mend, you pay, you survive. You may earn respect in your village, but your name does not travel far. You are the dust that feeds the roots of the tree, and no one thanks the dust. There are whispers of others, beggars, travelers, lepers, the untouchables who hover at the edges of towns. They are feared, pitied, or shunned, depending on the day. They do not belong, and to not belong in this world is the worst fate of all. Punishment comes not as spectacle, but as silence. A public whipping, perhaps, or time in the stocks, where the cold crawls through your bones as others pass by, not quite looking. For graver sins, theft, blasphemy, defiance, there may be disappearance. A locked room beneath the manor, a pit in the woods, a trial whose outcome was never in doubt. No one raises their voice against this order, not because they believe it fair, but because they know it endures. The hierarchy is not made of men, it is made of centuries, and the weight of centuries cannot be lifted by one pair of hands. So you walk carefully, you speak carefully, you bow when you must, kneel when you must, and pray that your name remains too small to draw attention. In this world, safety is not found in rising, but in remaining invisible. The morning does not announce itself with alarm or urgency. It arrives slowly, shyly, like the pale hand of light creeping through the cracks in a shuttered window. You do not wake to sound, but to chill. A thin breath of cold air slipping beneath your blanket, nudging your skin until it stirs your bones. You are lying on straw, still warm where your body has pressed it flat. The blanket above you is woven wool, rough at the edges, heavy with the scent of smoke and damp nights. Beneath it, you are clothed. Sleep is not bare in this world. The air is too sharp, and modesty, even in the dark, is tightly held. You curl your fingers briefly, feeling the stiffness in your knuckles from the cold and the ache of sleep not quite deep enough. The hearth across the room is nothing but cinders now, a soft orange memory under the ashes. Someone, you perhaps, or someone older, will need to coax it back to life. Fire is not a switch here. It is a ritual. You rise slowly, wrapping your cloak around your shoulders, and your feet find the rushes scattered across the floor. They rustle faintly, releasing the ghost of dried herbs pressed among them. Mugwort, sweet flag, wormwood, each a whisper of last summer's harvest. A bucket sits near the door, brimming with water hauled the night before from the village well. You splash a little into a wooden basin, and it hits your skin like the first breath after a long silence. The cold startles, then settles. You rub your hands briskly, not to cleanse, but to awaken. There is no soap, there is no mirror. Your reflection exists only in the eyes of others, and perhaps in the stillness of a puddle after rain. The light outside is growing, still gray, still soft, but it creeps higher with every moment. You hear the stirrings of animals, a bleating from the lean-to beside the cottage, a dull thump as a chicken hops from its roost. The world does not wake all at once. It wakes in layers. There is bread from yesterday, left wrapped in cloth on a shelf high enough to keep it from mice. You break it with both hands. It is dry, a little stale, but familiar. The chew is slow. You eat not with urgency, but with habit. Beside it, a small cup of ale, flat and faintly sour, brewed to be drunk with the dawn. Water is a risk. Ale is a tradition. If you live alone, you move through the morning in silence. If you live with others, family, a spouse, children, or the old, your movements are quieter still. You do not speak much. Words are saved for the work. They are not wasted on greetings that the body already gives through glances, shared warmth, or the passing of the ladle. If the season is cold, your first task is to revive the fire. You kneel, coaxing dry twigs and curls of bark into a loose nest. You blow gently, lips press together, and the ember stirs. There is no instant flame. It must be earned. It must be fed. When the fire takes, it is not a roar, but a whisper, like everything else here. You feel its heat begin to reach your fingers, and the room shifts. Not in light, but in spirit. The first smoke of the day rises up the chimney, carrying with it the scent of damp wood, scorched wool, and the faint memory of last night's stew. You add more wood from the stack beside the hearth, each piece carefully chosen, stored through long seasons and split with your own hand, or the hand of someone you remember now in the way the logs are stacked. A neighbor passes outside. You hear the crunch of boots on frost, the murmur of a low cough. You do not call out, they do not stop. But there is a moment shared, even through the walls. Two people awake at the same time, beginning again in a world that never truly rests. If you are devout, you might kneel briefly, not for spectacle, not for praise, but to mark the beginning. You say a prayer, not loud, not long, but enough to settle your mind. A few Latin words you do not fully understand, but which feel right in your mouth after bread and before work. Day has not begun in any modern sense. There is no schedule, No rush, no inbox. But there is a rhythm. The sun will climb, the tasks will unfold, the hours will slip past like the flow of water from a cracked jar. But now, in this stillness, you are ready, dressed, fed, warmed, and half listening to the sounds of the world as it rubs its eyes. Outside, the mist begins to thin, and the crows cry in the bare branches like they are remembering something you have yet to learn. And so, you open the door and step into the day. The fire has taken hold now, its light dancing faintly across the stone of the hearth. It crackles not with urgency, but with rhythm, like a breathing thing. You sit nearby, warming your hands, your knees, your thoughts, while the first meal of the day begins its slow creation. In this world, food is never far from effort, never distant from flame, and always more about sustenance than satisfaction. The kitchen is not a separate room. It is the room. The place where fire lives is also the place where flour is sifted, where onions are peeled, where bones are boiled long past their memory of meat. You begin by preparing what is most essential, not for yourself alone, but for all who share your roof. The family eats together, not as ritual, but as necessity. Time and heat are not yours to waste. Grain is the foundation, always grain. You reach for the sack of barley or rye, kept in a cool corner in a wooden chest. It smells of earth, of sun-warmed fields long since harvested, and of the faint musk of flower moths that come no matter how tightly the lid is shut. You measure with your hand, not a cup, and pour it into a bowl carved from ashwood. A little water, a pinch of salt, maybe a splash of ale or milk if the cow has given enough. You stir slowly, letting your fingers test the thickness, feeling each part combine like the turning of seasons. If you have yeast, you saved it from yesterday's dough. If not, the bread will be flat, dense, heavy with purpose. It will fill the belly, if not the heart. A small round is shaped, then wrapped in cloth and placed near the edge of the hearth. Not too close, not too far, so it may rise if it chooses in the warmth of patient flame. There is a pot already warming, its iron belly blackened with years of soot and steam. Inside, a pottage, a stew of what remains, what is found, what is given. Cabbage, onions, perhaps a sliver of smoked pork saved from the last butchering. You stir it with a long-handled spoon, the surface shimmering with fat, the scent rising like a memory. It is not rich, but it is real. Spices are rare. Salt, if you are fortunate. Mustard seed, horseradish, wild garlic in the spring. Flavor is not expected to surprise you. It is expected to remind you of the soil, the fire, the care that carried each ingredient from field to table. You set the table slowly, not with silver, not with finery, but with care. Wooden bowls, pewter spoons, a cloth if it is a feast day. Otherwise, sleeves will do. Bread is broken with hands, passed down the line. The youngest served last, the oldest always first. You eat with quiet gratitude, not because someone told you to, but because you remember what hunger feels like, how it grows behind the ribs like vines through stone. There is no waste. Bones are saved for stock, rinds are fed to pigs, crumbs gathered for birds. Even the ashes have purpose mixed into lye for washing. You eat slowly, not from ritual, but from respect. Each bite is a piece of effort, a measure of time. Midday, if work allows, may bring another meal. Heavier if you are laboring in the fields, lighter if the pantry is thin. A bowl of beans, a slice of dried apple, maybe cheese, hard and salty, wrapped in waxed cloth and shared in wedges. There is no gluttony, there is no indulgence, but there is comfort. There is warmth in the hands that serve, and peace in the simplicity of food that feeds more than just the stomach. You eat, you talk softly if you must, you drink what is available. Weak ale, water from the well boiled to safety, or a thin cider if the orchard was generous. And when the meal is done, you do not linger. There are no courses, no dessert, only the scraping of bowls, the wiping of hands on aprons, the return to work. But your belly is full, and your spirit, in some small way, is steadier than it was before the meal began. Later, in the evening, there may be another round. Smaller, simpler, leftover pottage, reheated. Bread dipped in broth, a final swallow of ale. You do not eat by candlelight for beauty. You eat by it because there is no other light. Shadows gather as the sun fades, and the fire grows again in the center of the room, cradling the night's last warmth, and then sleep will come. But not yet, not while there is still work to be done. The sun, now risen to its middle height, pours gray light through gaps in the thatch and the latticed windows, but it offers little warmth. Its rays filter through a haze of wood smoke drifting from every chimney, mingling with the sharp scent of earth turned by plow and boot. You step outside into the yard and feel the chill underfoot where dew wet the morning grass, now trampled flat by hooves and heavy boots. Your day's work begins the moment you cross the threshold, before any words are spoken, before your skin has time to question the aching in your back or the stiffness in your shoulders. First, you gather tools. A scythe with a blade honed sharp, its edge still warm with rust from yesterday's harvest. A rake worn smooth where it has been gripped too many times. A wooden yoke, heavy as a promise, whose leather straps you adjust over your shoulders until they settle into the hollows of your collarbones. Each tool has its history. Splinters where you caught your fingers, dents from stones too small to see until the blade struck them, the faint smell of sweat and splintered wood that lingers even after you have cleaned them. You walk to the field. The path is narrow, bordered by hedges of hawthorn and wild rose that will bloom in a month, their buds still tight in the cool air. The plowed furrows stretch out in neat lines, dark ridges of soil turned soft and crumbly by oxen and labor. You lift the scythe and begin. The motion is graceful if you move correctly, a low sweep of the arms, a bend of the knees, a twist of the torso. You cut through tall stalks of grain, the sound a dull whisper as each stalk parts under the blade. You feel the vibration travel through your hands, up your arms, into your chest, as though your heart beats in time with the grass surrendering to steel. Your sweat is slow to form in this chill, but it comes, a sheen along your hairline and the nape of your neck. You pause occasionally to rest your shoulders against the handle of the scythe, to wipe your brow on the back of your sleeve, to drink from a leather waterskin that tastes faintly of sour grain. You do not hurry. There is no hurry. These fields expect you daily, not urgently. They know you will return until the harvest is done, and until then, you labor in a rhythm that matches the swing of your blade. By midday, the scythe is set aside, and you shift to other tasks. You check the animals, horses, oxen, pigs, chickens, each requiring different care. You open the stable door and are hit by the familiar warmth of horse breath, the sweet, yeasty smell of hay long stored. You run your hand along a flank, feeling the heat and the muscles beneath the thick hair. You clean the stall, shoveling straw and droppings into a wheelbarrow with a steady hand, mindful of your back, mindful of each movement so that it becomes almost silent, as though each motion were part of a ceremony rather than a chore. Next, you lead the oxen to the trough. Their harnesses grind softly as you fasten straps and adjust the yoke. They pant low, blinking in the light, their coats rough with dust. You pour grain into the trough, oats, barley, perhaps a handful of peas if you can afford them, and they lower their big heads to eat, their breath steaming in the cold. You talk to them in low tones, not because they understand your words, but because the act of speaking softens the world, makes it kinder. There are repairs to be made. A loose roof tile needs resetting. A section of fence has rotted through, the cartwheel wobbles at an awkward angle. With each task you gather nails, spare boards, hammers, wrenches fashioned from wood and metal. You crouch beneath the eaves, feeling the rough-hewn timbers above you, their grain worn smooth by the passage of seasons. When you raise the hammer, its head feels familiar in your palm, heavy and sure. Each strike drives a nail home. Each board you replace holds back wind and rain so that tomorrow the hearth may burn with steadier heat. In the afternoon, you may set out to collect fuel. The woodpile rests in a shady copse at the edge of the homestead, the logs stacked with precision so air can circulate, so they do not rot. You choose pieces still green enough to split, lift them over your shoulder in bundles, and carry them back. Each log thuds into the stack by the hearth, adding to the warmth of tomorrow's fire. By the time your muscles ache in honest protest, there is still more to do. You return to the cottage and attend to water stored for cooking and washing. You fill buckets, and once more water is hauled. The surface ripples under your hands, and you catch a glimpse of sky and hedge reflected in those shifting patterns. You fill the kettle and set it to boil, so that after your hands have worked wood and soil and metal, they may be cleansed again. If you are a weaver or a spinner, you sit by the fire with spindle or loom. The fibers, wool, flax, hemp, drape over your knees like faded ribbons. You spin or weave, each thread drawing out the warmth of your lap, the proximity of flame, the meditative pulse of finger and wheel. The wool that was once a sheep on a hill becomes the cloth that warms you in this moment. No matter the task, you do not stop until the shadows lengthen low on the ground. You watch the sun slip toward the horizon, and you know the evening is near. There are grains yet to be threshed, tools yet to be cleaned, wood yet to be arranged. But you pause as the air cools, feeling the shift in light as though it were a breath drawn by the world itself. When at last you set your tools aside, your body weighted with fatigue and quiet pride, you return inside. You wash your hands once, more in cold water and then in warm, soapy water if it has been rendered from ash and fat. You wrap your fingers around the rim of a mug, drinking the last of the ale as your breath frees the scent of hops and barley. Work ends only when the tasks are done, but done they rarely are. Still, you lay aside what you can, settle by the fire, and let the flames erase the day's toil with their slow turning. You breathe, your body relaxing into a shape that is not purpose but rest. And in that moment, you know that tomorrow will come again with its own wild rhythm of labor, but for now, it is enough. You have worked, you have built, you have cared. And as the fire crackles behind you, you allow yourself the quiet satisfaction that was born of honest effort. When the day's steady tasks ease for a moment, a different kind of rhythm stirs the village, a gentle pulse of laughter, music, and shared stories that wraps itself around the heart like a familiar cloak. Leisure here is rare, but valued all the more for its fleeting nature. It arises in the half-light between work and supper, in the pause between chores, or on days when church bells toll for a feast. You step into the common yard, where a handful of neighbors have gathered beneath the low beams of a thatched shelter. The air is tinted gold by the late afternoon sun, and the scent of hay mingles with wood smoke, brewing warmth that softens tired joints. In the center, a pair of musicians stand, one with a fiddle carved from maple, its surface worn smooth by eager fingers, and another working a small drum of deer hide stretched tight over a bent frame. They play not with haste, but in a slow, steady tempo that matches the breath of the world around you. Children chase each other in uneven circles, their bare feet leaving faint imprints in the dust. They shout softly, voices bright against the muted backdrop of stone and timber, but when an adult approaches they quiet, eyes shining with mischief. Some carry wooden swords, curved sticks they brandish like young knights defending a castle. Others clutch carved wooden animals that clatter against each other as they run. Their games are simple, drawn from the land and from imagination, but they feel grand as kingdoms under the sky. Elders sit on benches along the wall, leaning on canes or crooks of wood, watching the scene with gentle smiles. Their eyes hold the memory of dances long past, of feast days and weddings that blurred into song. When they speak, their voices are low and rich with nostalgia. They tell stories in fragments, of a harvest blessed by a saint, of a fox outwitting a hound, of a traveler who arrived at dawn and vanished by dusk. Each tale drifts over the crowd like smoke, weaving threads of connection between the present and the echoes of yesterday. Soon, someone brings out a board game, simple square of wood marked with lines and pits. They pass it from hand to hand, arranging pairs of smooth pebbles or carved bone counters. The rules are explained quietly. Move your pieces, capture your neighbor's stone, avoid the pits that swallow your luck. It is a game of patience more than skill, a test of steady hand and even temper, and each player leans forward, intent as though the outcome will shape the fate of the village itself. On feast days, the leisure deepens into celebration. Banners, of linen dyed in red and blue, hang from poles, fluttering in the breeze like gentle flames against the sky. Tables groan under the weight of roasted meats, thick loaves of bread studded with raisins, bowls of stewed fruit sweetened with honey, and jars of cider that hiss as they are opened. A roasted pig's head, still bearing its bristles, sits at the center as both trophy and invitation. No one rushes to carve it, but when it is time, the knife moves in smooth arcs, sending succulents into plates passed hand to hand. Music swells as more instruments join, a flute whose notes rise like birds, a hurdy-gurdy that drones beneath the melody, a small harp that washes over the gathering like water. Voices join in song without a conductor. Some hymns borrowed from church, others bawdy ditties that speak of love, of loss, of wine, and women and wandering. The songs are not loud, they are intimate, each voice blending with the next in a tapestry of sound that warms the bones more deeply than any fire. Dancing follows, not the formal steps of a courtly ball, but a communal weaving of hands and feet. You join the line, your hand slipping into another's. You step together, forward, and back in time with the fiddle's slow insistence. You feel their breath against your palm, the rough weave of their sleeve against your wrist. Each motion carries you further away from worry, further into the present heartbeat of the moment. The children watch from the edge, then slip in between. Adults, their giggles like bells. They twirl under lifted arms, their skirts swirling in dusty circles. The elders tap their canes in time, nodding along as though each beat reminds them they are alive, still part of this world. The children watch from the edge, then slip in between adults, their giggles like bells. They twirl under lifted arms, their skirts swirling in dusty circles. The elders tap their canes in time, nodding along as though each beat reminds them they are alive, still part of this world. The celebration does not last until darkness. It is never meant to. As the sun dips low behind the rooftops, the music softens, the dancers release their partners, and the plates are cleared with quiet courtesy. No one walks away in silence, but no one lingers either. All know the morning will come again, and with it labor, and with it the simple rituals of survival. Yet in these hours, every hand that held a cup, every foot that found the floor, every voice that joined the song was a part of something beyond work. You felt it in the hum of conversation, in the shared laughter, in the space between notes where memories are born. As you step back through the yard gate toward home, the hush returns, but it carries a trace of something bright. A candle glow left in your chest. You tuck that light beneath your cloak, knowing it will warm you through the gray hours to come. And the next day, when you return to the fields or the hearth, You carry that warmth with you, a gentle reminder that, in a world so often defined by toil, there is grace in gathering, solace in shared breath, and hope echoing in each quiet song. The cottage door closes with a soft thud behind you, sealing out the swirl of dusk and gathering you into the heart of domestic life. Here, within these low timber walls, the world narrows to the hearth's glow and the steady breathing of those you share your space with. Home is not merely shelter. It is a living thing, tended, fragile, resonant with memory. You step into the main room, where a table stands scarred by years of knives and cups. Alongside it, a cradle rocks gently, its curved runners clicking on the earthen floor. Inside, the youngest member of the household sleeps, swaddled in linen, their face soft as the moon. Across the room, an older child kneels before a board, tracing symbols with a shard of chalk, letters from a primer if the family can afford one, or patterns meant to teach dexterity if not. Their head lifts as you enter, and you offer a quiet smile. No words are needed. They return the gesture, and you both settle into the familiar warmth of recognition. By the hearth, a woman, mother, sister, wife, companion, tends to the stew that will become tonight's meal. Her hands move in a practiced dance, stirring, skimming, tasting. The pot is heavy iron, its shape round as the world, and it hums with heat. She lifts the lid carefully, releasing a sigh of steam fragrant with onions and herbs too precious to waste, parsley, thyme, a single bay leaf. When she looks up, her eyes catch yours, and in that moment you share a conversation carried on glances alone, of hunger and safety, of day's end and tomorrow's dawn. Behind her, a dog sleeps curled on a mat of woven reeds, its breathing slow and certain. Beside the fire, a stool sits empty, perhaps reserved for a guest, or perhaps for you, after the woodpile and the well have been attended to. You draw it closer to the flames, letting its warmth seep through the rough weave of your cloak. In one corner, shelves hold vessels of clay and wood, bowls for porridge, cups for ale, jugs for water and milk. Each piece bears the fingerprint of its maker. Each rim is worn smooth by countless lips. You lift a cup and feel the familiar weight, the coolness of unglazed clay. It comforts you, reminding you that these objects, like the people around you, have endured countless suns and seasons. Conversation here is sparse but rich. Words are chosen with care, spoken low and measured. You share news of the day, how the barley grew thin in one field, how the horses showed restlessness, how the widow, at the far end of the lane, lost another sheep. No gossip enters this space, only the facts that shape your shared survival. And in exchanging them, you knit yourselves closer, each voice a thread in an unbroken tapestry. Later, when the stew has been ladled into bowls and passed around the table, you taste it slowly. The flavors are simple: root vegetables, a scrap of meat, the sharpness of herbs, but they carry the aroma of home, of hearth, of belonging. You chew thoughtfully, feeling the warmth spread from your chest to your fingers to your toes. To eat together is to affirm your place in this circle, to acknowledge that you are not alone. When the meal is done, the children are guided to bed. You carry the cradle outside and gently rock it beneath the eaves, singing a quiet lullaby in a language older than memory. The night air is crisp, and the song drifts across the yard like a promise. You place the child back inside and draw the blanket up to their chin, pressing a soft kiss to their forehead. Alone, you sit by the dying embers and reflect on the threads that bind you. The laughter shared in the yard, the work done in fields of frost and mud, the songs sung beneath lantern light. You think of your partner, together through harvests good and bad, and feel the solidity of their presence in the empty space beside you. You think of ancestors whose hands shaped these walls and whose memory lives in the grain in your bowl. The night deepens. A single star glimmers through a small window above the hearth, a speck of hope in the vast dark. Outside, the village sleeps, each home cradled by its own fires, each family wrapped in blankets and prayers. Inside, you close your eyes, letting the warmth and the closeness carry you toward rest. In the quiet of the night, you understand that home is more than walls and roof. It is the sound of breathing, the arc of bodies rising and falling in unison. It is the weight of trust, the exchange of glances that speak of care. It is the weaving of lives so intertwined that pain and joy flow between you as seamlessly as blood through veins. And as sleep finally finds you, you hold on to one thought, that in this fragile, flickering world of straw and stone, family is your strength and home is your sanctuary. The embers glow a final time, then fade, leaving only the soft rhythm of your heartbeat to light the darkness. In the hush before dawn, the village's small wooden chapel stands like a silent sentinel, its silhouette carved against the pale sky. Within its walls, faith is woven into every beam, every stone, every whisper of air that drifts through the narrow windows. Here, religion is not an idea in a book or a sermon heard once on a Sunday. It is the pulse that underlies each heartbeat, the breath behind each prayer, the unseen thread that connects field and hearth, birth and death, lullaby and dirge. You step across the threshold, and the cool stone underfoot greets you like an old friend. The air smells faintly of incense, resinous, sweet, and strange against the earthiness of damp wool and human warmth. Candles stand in clusters on iron sconces, their flames steady and low, more for devotion than for light. They cast long shadows that dance like silent congregants on the walls. Each candle is an offering, some left by families in gratitude, others in hope, and still some by the poorest among you who save a sliver of wax from their own stores, so they may join the ritual of fire and prayer. You join the morning service when the priest arrives, his robes heavy with embroidered symbols of vines and fish and lilies. He carries a simple wooden cross, weathered at the edges, as though generations of fingers have traced its lines in search of comfort. His voice, when he speaks, is calm and rhythmic, words in Latin flowing over you like water. You do not understand every phrase, but you know them by heart, the plea for mercy, the thanks for harvest, the request for protection from plague and famine. Each line rises and falls with the breath of the congregation. Kneeling upon the cold flagstones, you draw, your cloak tighter around your shoulders, your breath misted in the air. You press your forehead to your folded hands and feel the roughness of the wool glove you wore outdoors. You let your thoughts quiet, as though each worry is a stone dropped into a pond, sinking beneath the surface, until only stillness remains. You pray not for miracles, such things are rare, but for small mercies, that your children learn to read safety in the sky, that your livestock survive the next winter, that your neighbor's cough does not turn to fever. After the readings, the priest moves among you with a bowl of blessed water. His fingers dip into the liquid, then trace a cross upon each forehead. You feel the coolness against your skin, a touch that carries both blessing and admonition. Remember what you owe. Remember whom you serve. His eyes meet yours for a moment, longer than courtesy demands, and in them you glimpse a compassion that does not judge but holds, like hands cupped around a fragile flame. As the service closes, a hush lingers. No one speaks until the priest has stepped back onto the earthen path outside. Then, gently, villagers exchange bows or nods. The sound of leather soles on stone returns, and you leave carrying the echo of Latin hymns in your heart. But religion here is not confined to the chapel. It is tangled in every ritual of daily life. Before you sow seed in the spring, you might pluck a stalk of barley and lay it across the plowshare, asking St. Benedict to bless the furrow. When a child falls, sick, You anoint their brow with oil consecrated at the altar, mixing it with the tears you could not shed in the presence of the priest. You mark the threshold of your home with charcoal on Michaelmas Eve, believing that the archangel's wings will guard against devils and disease. Even the smallest act becomes prayer. The turning of the wheelbarrow handles feels like a mantra. The rise of steam from a cauldron at dawn is an offering to Saint Bridget, whose fire never wanes. In the early morning mist, the village seems blanketed in secrets. Each rustle of wind through the hedges, each droplet sliding from a leaf, each caw of crow perched on a fence post feels charged with meaning beyond the ordinary. Here, nothing is truly random. Every sign, every whisper of nature, every shift in light is read like a page in a book written by unseen hands. You step outside your cottage and notice the dew on the grass shimmering in a pattern that reminds you of a spider web. Spiders are messengers of fate. If you see a web strung across a doorway, you pause and trace its lines with your gaze, wondering whether it foretells fortune, a weaving of new prosperity, or a warning of entanglement and delay. To destroy the web is to sever a message. Instead, you leave it be until the morning sun dissolves its silver threads. A black cat crosses your path before even the sun has climbed above the rooftops. In some corners of the world, this might be a harbinger of gloom, but here it is more nuanced. A cat walking toward you brings cautious curiosity. A cat running away signals that something unseen has spooked it. Perhaps a spring thaw that will flood the fields, or a neighbor's hidden sorrow soon to surface. You watch the cat's tail flick and hold your breath, then carry on, your senses sharpened to the subtlest tremors in the air. When the smoke from your hearth drifts steadily, upward, heading straight into the sky without curling, it is good. It means wind will stay gentle, rain will hold off, and your day will follow its expected course. But when smoke coils and spirals, twisting back toward the ground, that is a sign of storm or of conflict stirring within the village. You note its shape, then hurry to secure tools and tie down loose boards before the wind can tear them free. Birdsong, too, carries portent. The blackbird singing at dusk is a promise of harvest to come. Dark grains heavy on stalks, ready for the sickle. But if the lark sings at night, that is an ill omen. Night belongs to the hidden, to spirits who wander beneath the moon. You draw your cloak tighter and step beneath an archway until the song ends, as though by hiding you might slip past the notice of whatever watches in the dark. Your grandmother taught you that hiccups are more than a quirk of the body. They are tiny curses climbing your throat, each spasm a spirit testing your vigilance. You pause when they begin, swallow 3 times, then whisper a soft blessing to your own chest, pressing a finger to your forehead. The hiccups will fade, driven off by your quiet insistence that your body belongs to you alone. If you spill salt while preparing a meal, you drop a pinch on the threshold before you continue. It entices good luck to follow you in, a small offering, to counter the imbalance you have created. You never waste salt, but you do not hesitate to let a crystal or 2 fall freely into the air, watching it glitter in the firelight before it disappears into the cracks. Mirror images are treated carefully. A reflection in still water is an exact double of your world, and mirrors in this era are rare, small pieces of polished metal that hold more mystery than clarity. If your own face looks too sharp, too alive in the dim metal, you divert your gaze quickly, afraid that your other self might step free and wander off into shadow. You leave the metal turned face down until the sun calls it back to warmth. When a stranger passes through the village road without greeting anyone, the gossip gathers like storm clouds. Are they ill with plague, unclean, carrying a sickness that cannot be spoken aloud? Or are they a herald of change, a royal envoy, a wandering merchant with news from faraway markets? You watch their boots, their cloak, the way they hold their head, piecing together clues as though each stitch were a sentence in a tale you are desperate to decode. The moon's shape is observed nightly. A full moon is a time for caution, when spirits roam freely and the boundary between this world and the next thins. You move slower under its glow. You keep the doors latched. You whisper prayers to the Archangel Michael, asking him to patrol the gates of heaven so none may slip through. A new moon, invisible in the sky, feels like a blank page, a moment of uncertainty and possibility. You sleep lightly, as though poised to step into a dream or a nightmare at any moment. Even the color of your clothes can become omen. A splash of red on your cloak might signal passion or anger in your own heart, and you might avoid a heated word that day. A thread of green near your hem could draw envious eye or inspire hope of growth. You choose your fabrics quietly, arranging layers so that your intentions remain soft, your messages ambiguous, and so life is lived in constant listening. You feel the heartbeat of the world in the tremor of leaves, the murmur of beasts, the flicker of light on water. You gather every whisper as though your very survival depends on it, because in a place that holds mystery in every breath, it just might. The hearth fire's glow carries more than warmth. It carries stories born in the flicker of flame and whispered beneath starry skies. In every village there are tales older than memory, passed from lip to eager ear like a precious heirloom. These stories do not claim to be factual. They are not dry chronicles of dates and names. They are living echoes of wonder and warning, woven into the night so thickly that you can almost taste their magic on your tongue. One such legend speaks of the Lady of the Wood, a spirit clothed in mist and ivy who appears at twilight to those who wander too far from home. She is said to guide lost travelers back to safety if their hearts are pure, but to lead stragglers deeper into the forest if malice or greed lurks within them. Travelers leave offerings of bread and salt at crossroads, crumbs at the center of 4 paths, hoping to earn her favor and avoid the snap of her silent laughter echoing through the trees. Another tale belongs to the blacksmith's daughter, born beneath a lightning storm that split the sky above her family's forge. From infancy, she was said to hold flame in her breath and steel under her skin. As she grew, her hammer rang truer than any man's, and her blades were sharper than any blade in the kingdom. Yet she chose not to wield her gifts in war, but to shape plowshares and pruning hooks, believing that tools of peace would leave deeper marks on the world than swords ever could. It is told that when enemies attacked the village, she stood at the gate with a glowing plowshare, and the metal's heat alone drove siege engines back across the fields. Children know of the Mirror Knight, a spectral warrior said to haunt the ruins of an old castle beyond the river. His armor, forged from polished bronze, reflects back whatever the beholder fears most. Those brave or foolish enough to venture into the crumbling hall may find themselves face to face with their own guilt, their own regrets, their own hidden shadows made flesh. Few return. Those who do speak only in half-formed sentences, their eyes distant and restless, as though they still wander among shattered battlements, searching for absolution that may never come. There is also the Song of the River, an old melody, whose notes ride the current at dawn. Villagers claim that if you pause by the water's edge before sunrise and hum the tune you have heard in dreams, the river will whisper back a promise of rain for dry fields, of fish for empty nets, of safe passage for weary souls. But you must never mimic the song too precisely, or its magic will turn. Then the water may drag you under, pulling you backward into a time that no longer exists, trapping you in a loop of mist and melody with no path to shore. And then there are the saints who never were. Men and women who lived ordinary lives but whose virtuous deeds rippled outward so strongly that the people named them saints, regardless of church decree. A woman who delivered her neighbor's baby in the midst of plague, using only water and her own strength. a man who spent every coin. He had feeding strangers and found his generosity repaid tenfold in mysterious gifts at his own door. Their graves are unmarked, but pilgrims still leave coins or flowers at the edges of their fields, hoping to catch a sliver of that quiet holiness. You hear these myths not as fanciful diversions, but as guides to living. When you walk under an ancient oak rumored to be the site of a lovers' meeting that outwitted a tyrant, you pause to lay a hand on its bark and murmur gratitude for love's endurance. When you pass a lone standing stone in a field, you leave a handful of grain at its base, honoring the pact made between farmer and land centuries ago. In the market, merchants peddle charms carved with symbols drawn from these legends: a horse's shoe stamped with the Lady of the Woods leaf, a tiny bronze plowshare for protection, a silver shard etched with the Mirror Knight's crest. They sell hope in miniature form, tokens to carry in a pocket so that when the night is thick and the path unclear, you can touch them and feel less alone. These stories shift and adapt with every telling. A neighbor's version of the blacksmith's daughter may emphasize her kindness. A traveler's account of the river's song may warn of its danger. Each retelling stretches the edges of the legend, weaving new patterns into the tapestry of belief. To live here is to live within myth. Every oak, every standing stone, every hidden pool becomes part of the story. You move through your days aware that reality and legend intertwine, that the boundary between what is and what might be is more porous than you think. And as you lay your head to rest, you carry these stories into sleep, weaving them into your dreams so that when you wake, the world might seem just a bit more enchanted than it did the night before. In the quiet corners of the village, where the smoke from hearth fires drifts into the damp air and the scent of herbs hangs like a gentle veil, healing unfolds as both art and mystery. To be ill here is to become part of a web woven from observation, tradition, and hope. There are no white coats, no microscopes, no sterile halls. Instead, there are kitchen tables and wooden benches, pottery jars stained green and brown, and the gentle hands of healers who blend compassion with custom. When you first feel the telltale chill of fever, bones aching, skin flushed, breath coming in shallow gusts, you know to seek out the barber surgeon or the wise woman. The barber's pole outside his cottage, once a symbol of haircutting, now reminds you of bloodletting. The red and white stripes spiral together like the intertwining of life and death. You enter his dim shop and find rows of knives and lancets laid out on a cloth stained darker than fresh earth. The surgeon speaks softly as he binds a bandage or pricks a vein, his touch as precise as a scribe's pen. He believes that to rebalance the humors, you bleed your heat or your excess blood, you must let the stagnant flow away. The cut is shallow, the pain swift, and you breathe carefully into the silence that follows, trusting that the draft of blood will lift the fever like mist under morning sun. If your ailment is more subtle, a cough that rattles in your chest, a stomach that gurgles with uneasy rhythms, you might seek the wise woman at the edge of the village. Her cottage is small, overgrown with rowan and rue, and the windows are hung with bundles of drying herbs, sage, yarrow, wormwood, lavender. You sit on a stool fashioned from a split log, and she pours hot water over leaves in a cracked bowl, her hands steady as she crushes petals between her fingers. She explains in gentle tones that health is a balance of warmth and moisture, of spirit and flesh. To soothe your cough, she will mix honey with the pounded root of marshmallow and the resin of pine, warming the mixture over coals until its steam curls around you like a blessing. You drink slowly, feeling the sweetness coat your throat, the resin's sharpness clear your lungs, and the marshmallow's softness ease the spasm of each breath. When bones break or joints twist, you may find a traveling bone setter at the market. He carries a leather pouch filled with oils infused with arnica and comfrey, plants that promise to knit your flesh back together. His hands press and guide your limb into place, each movement deliberate, each crack and shift met with a soft murmur to calm both bone and spirit. He wraps your arm in splints of willow wood and linen cloth, tying them with strips of leather so tight that your pulse feels steady under the constriction. His final gesture is to anoint the splint with oil, and he whispers that healing begins, not only in flesh, but in belief. Your confidence in his craft is as vital as any balm. Pregnancy and childbirth carry both reverence and fear. A woman in labor is tended by midwives whose experience spans generations. They arrive with baskets of linen cloth, bowls of cooled water, and handfuls of blessed herbs. The laboring mother lies upon a bed of rushes and wool, her breaths slow, and measured, guided by the midwife's calm voice. When the time comes, the midwife places her hand at the small of the mother's back, pressing gently, offering strength. The cutting of the umbilical cord is done with a knife blessed by the priest, and the cord itself is buried beneath the threshold of the home, an act believed to tether the child to safety. After birth, the mother drinks a tea of red rose petals and blackberry leaves to restore her strength, while the child is baptized at dawn to protect its soul from wandering spirits. Plague and pestilence are met with a mixture of fear, ritual, and improvised science. When the blackened nodules appear under the skin and the fever rages like wildfire, villagers seal their doors and plaster windows with clay. They hang garlands of rosemary and bay in doorways, inhaling their scent as a shield against infection. Some carry pomanders, balls of ambergris and cloves tied in leather pouches, pressed to the nose when they venture beyond their own threshold. At night, prayers are chanted in the chapel, and torches are lit in procession to ward off the scourge. Those stricken are often laid upon straw in open fields, their bodies exposed to wind and sun, for it is believed that fresh air and light will draw the sickness out. Across all remedies, there is a quiet understanding. Healing is never certain, but hope can be tended like a flame. Each treatment is infused with intention. Each touch carries empathy. Each potion is an act of faith, not only in the plants and blades, but in the bond between healer and healed. You learn that sometimes the greatest medicine is the comfort of hands held in yours, the soft murmur of reassurance at your ear, and the presence of another soul who cares for you in a world where life can turn fragile as a glass lantern in the wind. And when you finally sleep again, warmed by herbal tea and the steady beat of your own heart, you carry with you the knowledge that in this world of shadow and light, of humors and prayers, healing is a path walked together, by those who suffer and those who tend, in hope that each dawn brings a little more balance to the body and to the soul. In this world, death is neither an end nor a surprise. It is woven into the same tapestry as birth and harvest, a turning of the wheel as certain as dawn and dusk. You learn early to move with reverence around the dying, to speak in hushed tones so as not to hasten their passing, and to prepare the living for the journey that awaits every soul. When a villager nears the edge between life and whatever lies beyond, family and neighbors gather at the bedside. The room is lit by a single candle, its flame steady against the hush, and the air smells of lavender and rue laid across pillows to calm fevered minds. You take the dying person's hand, tracing the lines of age or youth with gentle fingers, feeling the pulse slow until it becomes an echo in the stillness. A healer brings a cup of wine mixed with honey, a last comfort to soothe parched lips. You press it to their mouth, guiding a sip so small it passes like a prayer. The village priest or the wise woman may offer words, not sermons but remembrances of a life lived. They speak of kindness given and hardships borne, of laughter shared and tears shed. These words are not spoken to chase away the unknown, but to remind the soul of its own story, as though names and memories might serve as lanterns guiding the spirit through the dark. You join in, softly recounting moments you witnessed. The way their eyes glowed at the first swallow of spring, the gentle steadiness of their hands at a child's birth, the courage in their voice when storms threaten the fields. When the final breath comes, it is quiet but palpable. A soft exhale that seems to draw the candle flame closer, as though the soul pulls light inward and then moves beyond its reach. You feel the weight lift, and in that moment you sense something change in the room, as though the air itself has rearranged. There may be a moan from the wooden floorboards or a crackle from the hearth as if the house itself acknowledges the passing. The body is washed in a basin of warm water scented with herbs, rosemary for remembrance, frankincense for sanctity, violets for modesty, and wrapped in a shroud of linen, each fold laid with care. The face is brushed free of fever's sheen, the hair smoothed back, and the hands crossed gently over the chest. You step back and let the silence settle, feeling that respect is both given and received in those last moments. Preparation for burial follows a rhythm older than memory. The coffin is crafted from simple oak planks, unadorned yet sturdy, as though each board carries the strength needed for the journey beyond the grave. The smith may drive nails with measured strikes so the wood does not split, and the carpenter inscribes a crude cross upon the lid, an emblem of faith that bridges worlds seen and unseen. You stand nearby, ready to help lower the coffin when the time comes. On the day of the funeral, the procession forms at the edge of the village. A handful of torches is lit if the sky is overcast, their flames steady in leather sconces. Villagers line the path in silence, cloaks drawn close, heads bowed. The coffin moves slowly, borne on the shoulders of those who knew the deceased best. With each step you feel the weight of years, of seasons shared, of storms endured, of laughter and meals passed around the same tables where you now stand. At the grave, a priest utters prayers in Latin, his voice carried off by the wind. The words are fragments of comfort and hope, that the dead find rest, that their spirit rises to mercy, that those left behind find solace in faith. You watch as the coffin is lowered. The sound of wood against earth is muffled but final, like the closing of a book you once held dear. Each villager approaches, dropping handfuls of soil or small stones into the grave. Some leave tokens: a worn shoe, a sprig of heather, a simple iron ring. These offerings are not for the body but for the journey, provisions for a path through darkness. You press soil between your fingers, feeling the cold weight of the earth, and let it slip through your grasp until the hollow fills. A bell tolls once for each decade of the person's life, its reverberations rolling across fields and fences, like ripples on a pond. In that moment you sense the full circle of existence: birth cry and final breath, laughter and tears, the steady drum of days that connect each generation to the next. For those who pass in winter, there is a ritual of fire and water meant to purify before the grave closes. A torch is dipped in oil and set alight, then held aloft as smoke curls around the mourners. A bowl of water is passed, and each person sprinkles droplets on the ground, believing that water wards off the restless dead. After the grave is filled, the villagers step back and share bread and ale by the yew tree at the churchyard's edge. The sharing is not revelry, but kinship, an affirmation that life continues even as one life ends. You drink slowly, feeling the warmth spread, and you speak softly to those closest to you, recalling small kindnesses offered by the one who has gone. In the quiet days that follow, you tend the grave, clearing snow in winter, laying flowers in spring, lighting a candle at dusk in summer. You return on each anniversary, dropping a single wildflower or a ribbon plucked from your cloak. Each return is a promise that memory endures, that love reaches beyond the edge of existence, that the dead are carried forward in the hearts of the living. And so, in this world woven of earth and spirit, you learn that death is not a door slammed shut, but a passage opened wide. It is a journey you cannot take yet, but one that will one day call your name. Until then, you live in the gentle balance of mourning and celebration, of tears and laughter, of life and its inevitable, quiet counterpart. In every hamlet, there is someone who walks the edges of convention, a figure both welcomed and watched with wary eyes, a fool, an outsider, a trickster whose presence is as unpredictable as the wind that stirs the chaff from the threshing floor. This person is neither fully of the village nor utterly removed from it. They carry no land, claim no lineage, yet they belong to the shared tapestry of daily life as surely as the color of a woolen cloak or the scent of newly baked bread. You first notice the fool in the market square at midday when the sun blooms. High and villagers gather to trade eggs for cheese, wool for salt, grain for ale. He stands on a crate, wobbly and small, dressed in motley rags that once might have been fine cloth but now hang patched and frayed. A cap with bells rests on his head, though the bells have long since fallen silent from rust. His face is open, unashamed, with a dusting of freckles and a crooked smile that reveals a missing tooth. He juggles a trio of apples, each toss precise enough to charm a child, yet dense enough to bruise if they fell wrong. When you pass, he tilts his head and bows in exaggerated fashion, as though greeting a king, and then he grins, eyes twinkling, with mischief. He plucks a stray feather from your cloak and tucks it behind his ear, offering it back with a theatrical flourish. You laugh, though you're not sure why, and you realize that in his company the unspoken rules hold less weight. He plays with boundaries, inviting you to do the same, if only for a moment. But the fool's magic is not merely laughter. He carries stories, strange anecdotes from distant fairs, rumors of a noble's ill fortune, descriptions of a forest, where trees bleed sap like old wounds. He sells these tales in hushed, urgent whispers, trading them for a loaf of bread or a wooden bowl. His eyes widen as he describes how the moon once fell from the sky and shattered in a field, leaving behind shards that grant dreams of future days. You listen, half captivated, half skeptical, and in that moment the world stretches beyond its hedges and plowshares into the realm of possibility. Children follow him on uneven feet, giggling as he balances on fence rails, performing acrobatics that seem to flirt with both grace and collapse. He flips a tankard on its side and catches it by its handle with one hand, then tips it backward as though daring gravity to win. The children cheer, but you sense the trickster is not merely entertaining. He is teaching the young to question what they see, to feel the pulse of chance, to remember that even the weightiest rule can be upended with the right touch. Yet, when night falls, the fool vanishes from the square, leaving only the echo of his laughter and the scattered skins of apples. Some say he sleeps in the abandoned chapel at the village edge. Others whisper that he is bound to the crossroads, where he dips fingers into the four corners of the world. A few claim he is not a man at all, but a spirit of the woods, taking human form to stir the hearts of those who grow too serious. Despite his eccentricities, villagers rely on the fool in small ways. When an argument grows too heated in the tavern, he slips between the disputants, miming their quarrel until they laugh and lower their voices. When the harvest burns too bright with heat and worry, he scatters handfuls of water into the air, creating a fine mist that cools brows and spirits alike. Even the Lord Steward, who scorns the fool's ragged coat, grudgingly accepts a silver halfpenny when the fool forecasts fair weather at a king's market. You once followed him beyond the last cottage, where the road meets the meadow, and found him crouched beside a fallen stag. He whispered a gentle phrase you could not catch, then laid his hand upon the animal's flank. Its flank rose and fell, as if the beast breathed again. You blinked, and the stag stirred, lifted its head, and bounded away into the twilight. The fool stood, mud on his knees, and smiled that crooked smile as though he had performed nothing miraculous. Yet from that night on, villagers spoke of the stag's return, of its antlers glinting in moonlight, guiding lost travelers back to home. Some nights, if you stir in bed and listen, you think you hear him at the window, humming a tune that flutters between reality and dream. The melody is unplaceable, a mixture of fiddle and flute, of wind through reeds, of a child's lullaby remembered only in fragments. It lulls you towards sleep, and you wonder whether you dreamed the tune, or whether the fool truly visited under the cloak of darkness. He remains a paradox, neither wholly friend nor foe, neither maddening nor benign. He reminds you that life has room for chaos within its order, that rules can bend, that laughter can heal, that belief can shift the shape of things. Most of all, he reminds you that even in a world built on hierarchy and custom, there is space for wonder, for surprise, for the impossible slipping through the cracks. And when you find a half-eaten apple beneath your bedstead, its skin carved, with a tiny spiral you do not recognize, you smile softly, knowing that the fool has passed through your life again, leaving behind a fragment of enchantment, or perhaps a challenge. For in his wake, the world never quite feels the same. You have heard the soft clatter of spurs before you see him, a distant echo of authority that grows steady as a heartbeat. He steps from the courtyard into the hushed chamber where you wait, draped in finery that gleams even in candlelit half-shadow. His cloak is deep burgundy, trimmed with fur so pale it seems to catch the light and hold it like a promise. His boots are polished leather, stamped with the crest of his house, and each movement he makes carries the weight of every soul who bends beneath his rule. This is the lord of the manor, the man whose voice shapes the boundaries of your life as surely as walls shape a room. His face is calm, composed, the lines around his eyes hints of laughter remembered and discretion practiced. He bows only once, just enough to acknowledge your presence without diminishing his own. You bow deeper, mindful that to meet his gaze too long is to invite scrutiny. His eyes scan you quietly, as though measuring your pulse through fabric and posture, discerning whether you are friend or stranger, loyal or uncertain. When he speaks, his tone is soft but firm, each word chosen, as deliberately as a stone set in a tower wall. He asks after the harvest, the state of the barns, the condition of the roads. His questions are practical, devoid of unnecessary flourish, yet you feel their import in every syllable. Your answers determine how many days you toil beyond the customary sunrises, or whether the steward will send horsemen to enforce a tax no one welcomed. His presence is neither cruel nor kind, but a force of nature you accept because survival depends on it. You have seen him end disputes with a single decree, heard him grant mercy to the repentant and order swift retribution for those who overstep his laws. He knows your name as surely as you know the boundaries of your fields. His memory holds every debt and every gift. Behind him stand his advisers, a steward with ledger in hand, ink smudged on his fingers, a chaplain whose quiet prayers echo the Lord's piety, a captain of the guard whose gaunt face betrays neither fear nor favor. They wait for their Lord's nod before speaking, and even then their voices are cautious, their suggestions framed gently. This is not a court of spectacle. It is a room of power measured in silence, where the pause before a reply carries more weight than any shout. He paces the chamber slowly, his boots silent on the woven rushes. The air is heavy with the scent of beeswax candles, warmed wood, and a faint note of leather from his gloves. You can almost hear the echo of distant hammers and plowshares beyond the walls, reminding you that life continues outside this space of judgment and decision. When he addresses you directly, it is personal yet reserved. He knows your families, struggles, the illnesses that visited your home, the debts you have carried through winter and spring. Yet his gaze remains steady, neither pitying nor dismissive. You sense that he believes in order above all, that kindness is granted sparingly and that mercy is a resource to be conserved. He speaks of a neighboring lord whose lands were ravaged by bandits, and you feel the tremor of unease at the thought of lawlessness creeping across borders he cannot mend. You find him at the edge of the field, sitting on an overturned basket beside the furrow he has just plowed. His hands are scored with calluses, each line a story of early mornings and stubborn earth. His tunic is patched at the elbows. His boots are caked with clay. Yet, when he looks up at you, there is warmth in his gaze, a quiet pride in work that shapes both land and self. He introduces himself simply. I am Bran, son of Edda, born on this soil as my father was before me. His voice is low, measured, bearing the cadence of someone who speaks seldom, but meaningfully. You settle beside him, brushing a stray blade of grass from your cloak, and he nods, inviting your ears to the tale that his weathered face is ready to tell. Last year, he begins, the spring was late. The frost clung to the ground well, into April, and I feared the seed would rot before it sprouted. I borrowed a handful of grain from the miller, more than my yield could justify, but I sowed it anyway, praying to St. Swithin for rain. The sky stayed stubbornly clear. My fields cracked under the sun as if pleading for mercy. He pauses, pressing his hat against his brow, eyes on the distant horizon where the sun hovers low. By midsummer, those sprouts were thin and yellow. In the market, my neighbor's barley sold for half its usual price. I sold my share for barely enough to buy salt. I thought that winter would break me. No fire, no food enough for my children. You lean forward, feeling the weight of his worry as though you carried it yourself. He breathes in slowly, then continues. But then came the rain. Not a downpour, but steady, persistent, like a blessing whispered across the fields. Each night it fell. Each dawn the dew lay soft as feathers. The grain grew tall and heavy, bending under its own golden burden. By harvest I had enough to feed my family and to offer my thanks to the church. He smiles, and in that smile you taste relief and humility woven together. On the day I reaped, I wore my father's leather gloves. He gave them to me when I first held the scythe, said they would protect my hands if I worked true. And they did. I remember the feel of the stalks sliding beneath the blade, the swish like silk cut by scissors. I carried the sheaves back at dusk, my back aching, but my spirit full. He shifts, sighing so softly it is almost a breeze. That winter was still harsh. We still worried over the children's coughs, over the cold that crept under the door. But when the wind howled, I would press my palm to the pocket where I kept a single grain from that harvest. I would let it sit in my hand until its warmth seeped through my skin, reminding me that even when the world seems empty, there is still plenty to be grateful for. You realize he is looking at you now, testing whether his story has been heard. You nod, placing a hand on your own chest. He smiles again, softer this time. That is how I became a farmer, not just by planting seed, but by trusting that something beyond me tended my fate. And so I tell this, when the fields are bare and the heart is heavy, remember that seasons turn, that hope rises like sap in spring. Plant your faith as you plant your grain, deep, steady, believing it will come to life. The sun slips lower, and a flock of sparrows stirs in the hedge, their chatter a gentle applause. Bran rises, dusting straw from his knees. I must return. To the barn, he says. The animals need feeding before dusk fully settles. But thank you for listening. A man's story is his harvest, after all. It feeds the soul in ways bread cannot. You stand, brushing soil from your cloak, and offer him a nod of respect richer than any coin. He returns it, then walks back toward the farmhouse, shoulders straight, carrying both his burdens and his blessings in equal measure. As you watch him disappear into the fading light, you carry his tale with you, its rhythms of hardship and mercy, of toil and reward, knowing that even the simplest story can bear the weight of wisdom and the warmth of hope. You meet the merchant when the sun rests high and the market square hums with barter and breeze. He sits beneath a patchwork canopy of dyed cloth, reds and blues faded by sun and rain, behind a sturdy trestle table laden with goods borrowed from distant lands, bolts of cloth in unfamiliar weaves, iron trinkets engraved with foreign symbols, jars of amber-hued spices that catch the light like captured fire. His name is Thomas, though few here know him by anything more intimate than the merchant. His hands are stained with indigo and iron, the marks of journeys on ships and carts. He greets you with a measured bow, his dark eyes reflecting both caution and curiosity. His life is one of movement, roads and rivers and inns with creaking floors, but today, here, he is anchored in the stillness between trades. He gestures to a bolt of wool cloth woven in a seaside town, its fibers soft as sea foam and dyed with woad so deep it laps like twilight. You run your fingers along its length and inhale a faint salt tang carried from the docks. He smiles and explains in a low voice that the dyers there use stones crushed by oysters and a secret kept in the rhythm of the tides. He offers you a small piece as a token, urging you to carry it home and feel the ebb and flow of another world against your skin. Nearby, his crates hold glass bottles filled with seeds, caraway, coriander, mustard, each jar sealed with wax and labeled in a script you cannot read. He lifts a lid to let you smell the coriander, its citrus brightness surprising in this muted morning. He warns that these seeds must be stored in cool darkness, or they will weep their oils and lose their potency. You tuck a pinch into a small cloth pouch he gives you, the spices rattling softly like distant bells. As the midday sun leans westward, the crowd ebbs and flows. A farmer offers grain in exchange for a length of cloth. A woman trades a carved wooden comb for a vial of rosewater from the east. Tomas negotiates with gentle firmness. No haggling that jars like stone, but an exchange that hums like well-fitted gears. He watches your face as you handle a silver brooch, noting the way your fingers hover over its surface before you decide. He nods when you choose to buy, lingering just long enough to let you feel that your choice mattered. Children drift by, their eyes wide at the jeweled beads he strings, on leather cords, turquoise, garnet, amber. He lets them try, sliding a bead onto a cord with deft patience, teaching them the art of threading. Their giggles hover over the table like sparks, and he laughs. A quiet sound, not of mockery, but of genuine delight. He eats sparingly, bread dipped in oil, a bite of cheese, so he can remain at his stall until the afternoon. He drinks water, from a gourd flask, sharing it occasionally with a thirsty sparrow that alights on the table's edge. He speaks to the bird as though it understands, its head tilting at each word. Toward dusk, he gathers his unsold wares and repacks them with care. He wraps cloth in linen, lays bottles in straw, and binds crates with rope carved from hemp, grown near the river he crossed last season. Each item is prepared not for rest, but for travel, a cycle of departure and return that defines his existence. The last customer departs. Tomas stands and breathes deeply, loosening the cloak at his throat. He looks out over the empty square, the echo of footsteps and barter fading like a song's last note. He touches each crate reverently, as though blessing the journeys yet to come. He tells you that tomorrow he will rise before the dawn, guiding his mule along rutted roads toward the next village. He will hear different tongues, see different skies, and feel again the thrill of chance trades and unexpected encounters. Yet he pauses, placing a hand on his chest, and says softly, "But this place, this moment, remains with me longer than any coin." You nod, sensing that in Tomas's day you glimpse more than commerce. You see the weaving of worlds, the quiet exchange of trust, and the way each object carries a story of origin, journey, and belonging. As he lifts the drawstrings on his coins, offering you a final smile, you understand that his true merchandise is not cloth or spice or trinket, but connection, a bridge of curiosity and care that spans miles and hearts alike. Late one evening, you find a stranger seated by the hearth in the tavern's quiet corner, head bowed low and cloak drawn tight around shoulders that have borne many roads. His boots are scuffed, his cloak stained with dust and rain, and a worn leather satchel rests at his feet. The tavern's warmth seems to thin around him, as though the fires of distant places cling to his bones. You settle across from him at a small table, the candle between you flickering with curious light. He lifts his gaze slowly, revealing eyes etched with both weariness and wonder. His name is Marcellus. He came from beyond the western hills. He says, from lands where the sun sets in colors unknown here, and where nights are darker than river mud at dawn. His voice is low and measured, the cadence of one who has spoken to strangers more often than to kin. He confesses that on his first night in that distant land, he slept beneath a tree older than memory, its roots winding deep into soil heavy with secrets. He dreamt that he walked through a cathedral whose walls were carved from water, and that voices rose around him in a language he could not learn but somehow understood. He awoke with tears on his cheeks and the taste of salt in his mouth, as though he had crossed an ocean in sleep. Marcellus speaks of towns built on the ruins of other towns, where every stone holds the echo of rain and rebellion. He tells of a marketplace where merchants hawk silk that shimmers like a dragon's wing, and spices that set tongues aflame. He traded with them his own coin for marvels, and felt both richer and more hollow when the transactions ended. He confesses fear of the night roads, where moonlight reveals phantoms of travelers who vanished long ago. He passed through a wood where wounded spirits lingered, their laments drifting on the wind like smoke from a dying hearth. He left offerings, bread wrapped in cloth, a flask of wine, to appease them, and yet he still heard their cries as he rode away. He carried guilt for a kindness misjudged. In a small village by a river, he taught a boy to read the stars, and the boy's father accused him of witchcraft. The father's anger spread like a plague, and villagers drove Marcellus from their gates with stones and curses. As he fled, he heard the boy's sobs carried on the wind, and the memory of those tears haunts him when he sleeps by unfamiliar fires. He lays out a tattered map on the table, ink faded by rain. It is marked with red crosses at places he dare not return to, and circles around villages he helped in passing. He confesses that at each marked place he left behind a token, an embroidered handkerchief, a bone carved with a promise, a simple pebble from his home hills, hoping to anchor a memory so that the people he aided would not forget his face. He remembers the night he saved a woman from a broken wheel on a muddy road. He set the axle with hands numb with cold, singing a soft prayer to keep fear at bay. When he finished, the woman offered him bread and water and wept as she blessed him. He left before dawn, carrying her gratitude like a lantern in the dark. He speaks of his homeland as if it were a dream he longs to re-enter. Green fields that ripen under gentle suns, hearth fires that never wane, the laughter of people whose names he cannot recall without tears. He confesses that he fears he will never belong again, that the world beyond these hills has changed him too deeply. As he falls silent, you realize that his confession is not one of crime, but of longing and regret, of kindnesses given and misunderstandings wrought. In his words, you hear both the weight of his journeys and the fragility of the human heart when it wanders too far from roots. You reach across the table and place a hand on his map, covering the red crosses and circles. The candlelight glints on faded ink as you speak softly. The world is wide, its paths crooked, but the kindness he carries with him remains the brightest compass. Marcellus nods, his eyes reflecting both relief and sorrow, as though his confession has lightened his burden even if only by a single breath. He rolls the map carefully and tucks it into his satchel. As he stands, you notice the tremor in his shoulders has eased. He clasps your hand in quiet gratitude and offers a faint smile, the first unguarded expression you have seen. Then, drawing his cloak around him once more, he steps out into the night. You remain by the hearth, watching the door close behind him. The embers glow softly in the hearth, and the tavern's warmth returns to its gentle rhythm. And you know that travelers come and go like seasons, each confession a bridge between places, each act of vulnerability a small flame that guides them. Home. You gather by the hearth one evening when a hush falls over the tavern, and the innkeeper, his cheeks flushed from the fire's heat, clears his throat. He promises a tale so strange, so absurd, that even the youngest children press closer, eyes wide and breath held in eager anticipation. "It happened last spring," he begins, voice low and conspiratorial, "when the sheep were giving birth, and the fields were fresh with green. There was a man, good fellow though a bit proud, named Tomlin the shepherd. He kept his flock near the hill where the old oak stands, and he carried himself with the air of someone who believed the grass was always greener on his side of the fence." You lean forward as he continues, picturing Tomlin's woolen tunic, and the crooked staff he leaned on when he wasn't striding about. Well, one morning, Tomlin woke before dawn, eager to count his lambs. He found one, or so he thought, nestled against his boot, soft, bleating like a newborn, with fur as white as spring barley. He scooped it up and tucked it under his cloak, planning to show it off at the market. He named it Snowflake, and spoke to it as though it understood every word. A ripple of laughter passes through the crowd, but the innkeeper's tone grows gentler, more amused. He rushed down the path toward the village, the lamb's bleats echoing through the mist. He barely noticed the state of his boots or the way his cloak snagged on the hedgerows. All he saw was the prize he'd present to the bailiff, a creature so fine it might fetch a coin or two from a noble's table. He pauses, grinning. But Tomlin did not notice that Snowflake was not a lamb at all. No, it was a gosling, a goose chick, a creature just as soft, just as pale, but with a bright orange beak and webbed feet that Tomlin only discovered when he tried to cup its head and found himself splashed by water he did not realize was in his own boot. Laughter swells around you as the image takes shape. The proud shepherd wading through dew-soaked grass, boot filling with pond water, trying to hush a goose's honks as though they were the delicate bleats of a lamb. He called it merrily Snowflake, and the gosling honked louder each time, flapping stubby wings that slapped his cloak like wet flannel. The innkeeper's eyes sparkle as he leans in. When Tomlin finally reached the market square, he shoved through the crowd, lifted his cloak, and held the creature aloft. "Behold," he cried, "my new lamb!" The bailiff peered at it, brow furrowed. The goose honked again and shook water from its feathers, sending droplets across the cobblestones. The bailiff's stern expression cracked into a smile, and he chuckled so hard he had to lean on his staff. Another bout of laughter rings out. You imagine Tomlin's face, a mixture of pride and confusion, as the market folk point and snicker. Realizing his mistake, Tomlin's face went as red as a beetroot. He tried to stuff the gosling back under his cloak, but the creature's webbed feet would not be tucked away. It honked, and people clapped in delight at the comedy of the proud shepherd humbled by his own boast. The innkeeper straightens, shaking his head. Tomlin left the market empty-handed, with a soaked cloak and a new respect for knowing one's flock. But the bailiff, in his kindness, offered him a silver penny for the laughs he'd provided the market that day. And from then on, Tomlin inspected each newborn lamb 3 times before announcing its arrival. He bows his head, ending the tale. "So, remember," he says with a wink, "even the most careful among us can be undone by a single oversight. And sometimes that is how the world reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously." The tavern remains quiet for a moment, the laughter fading into smiles and gentle nods. As you rise to leave, you carry the warmth of that absurd story, a reminder that pride can slip on the softest things, that humility can dawn in a puddle of goose water, and that in every mistake there is amusement to be shared and a lesson softly learned. You wake slowly, as if surfacing from a dream woven of mist and ancient wood. The first light is pale and gray, filtering through the narrow cracks in the shuttered window and gilding the edges of the rushes beneath you. Your body feels heavy, with sleep, as though last night's rest has settled into your bones, lulling them into quiet warmth against the chill that lingers in the air. Your breath mingles with the scent of straw and herbs pressed into the mattress, mugwort and lavender, dried months ago and woven between the rushes to ease slumber. You turn your head and see the room's low beams, darkened by smoke and time, and feel the pulse of the world beyond them. The soft caw of a crow at the yard gate, the distant murmur of water from the village well, the low stirring of a hearth, yet to be stoked. You draw your cloak around your shoulders before you rise, mindful that the cold air will slip beneath your tunic if you move too quickly. When your feet find the packed earth floor, the rushes crackle beneath them like the echo of autumn leaves underfoot. You pause with one hand on the wooden door frame, feeling the grain, smooth in places, rough where the years have etched it, under your palm. The door creaks as you lift the latch, and for a moment you hold it, suspended between night and day. Outside, the world is hushed. A pale fog drifts among the cottages, softening the shapes of loaded carts and stacked firewood. You inhale deeply, tasting the dew on the air, and your lungs fill with the promise of a new day. The sky above is a watercolor of muted blue and gray, and you watch as it lightens with each passing breath. You move toward the hearth, where embers lie like glowing embers of ancient stars. With practiced motion, you gather kindling from the woodpile, a few twigs, a curled strip of birch bark, and place them among the coals. You cup your hands around your mouth and blow gently, coaxing the spark into flame. The fire comes alive slowly, a soft crackle growing into a gentle roar that sends waves of warmth rippling across the stone hearth and into the room beyond. As the warmth spreads, you near the basin of water set to chill overnight. Your fingers touch its surface, and the cold slides through you like a whisper, waking the blood in your veins. You pour a little into a wooden bowl and splash it across your face, feeling each droplet slide down your cheeks, brushing away the last remains of sleep. You towel dry with a rough cloth scented faintly of vinegar, and the briskness sharpens your senses. You gather your tunic and belt, dressing slowly. The linen is cool against your skin at first, then warms as your body presses against it. You wrap your belt twice around your waist, securing the tunic snugly, and tuck the loose ends into the folds. Your boots, stiff from overnight rest, yield beneath your heel as you step into them. The leather gives a soft sigh, fitting itself to the curve of your foot. You linger by the doorway, watching smoke curl from chimneys and birds flitting between rooftops. A woman passes carrying a pail of water, her breath visible in the morning. Chill. She meets your gaze and offers a small nod. No words needed. The nod speaks of mutual beginning, another day unfolding, another set of hours to live and to shape. Before you walk away, you pause to break bread for the day. A small loaf, crusty and faintly warm, rests wrapped in cloth on a shelf. You tear off a piece, feeling its weight and texture, firm crumb beneath a crisp shell, and eat it slowly, chewing with the unhurried care of someone who honors every bite. You swallow, and the taste of grain warms your chest like a quiet benediction. With the last of the bread, you turn your face toward the rising sun, its light now spilling across the yard in pale gold. You take a steady breath, feeling the world breathe with you. Your shoulders relax, your mind clears, and you step forward into the morning, beginning the next cycle of labor, rest, joy, and survival. The day moves with a gentle momentum as you step into the courtyard. The chill of dawn has retreated to shaded corners, leaving the air crisp but promising warmth. You lift your gaze to the pale sky, its soft hues reflecting the quiet resolve of a world coming fully alive, and draw in a breath that tastes faintly of damp earth and wood smoke. First, you gather your tools. A supple leather satchel slung over one shoulder holds simple instruments: a small knife for cutting herbs, a length of twine for binding bundles, a worn leather pouch of seed saved for planting. You pause by the workbench beneath a low awning, where your basket waits, woven reeds dyed with faint berry juice. You slip the basket's loop over your wrist, resting its weight against your hip, and step toward the field. Your path follows a narrow track between cottages. You pass a woman coaxing steam from a clay pot. She nods without breaking stride. You pass a child carrying eggs in a rush, wobbling with care. Each face greets you in silence, each gesture a wordless affirmation of shared purpose. The path opens into the field you tended yesterday, where rows of young shoots stand in straight lines like soldiers at attention under the sky's pale command. You kneel at the first row and run your fingers along the soil, testing its moisture. It crumbles softly, neither too dry nor too sodden, a balance you have learned to read by touch alone. You gather the weakest sprouts and tuck them into your satchel, to be replanted in a softer patch near the hedge. You gather weeds by their roots, tall grass, thistle, hurried vines, pulling them free and letting the soil close over the hole you leave behind. As you move down each row, your hands mark a steady rhythm. Weed, test, replant, repeat. Your body bends and straightens in a gentle arc, your breath aligning with your movements until the work feels less like effort and more like a slow, deliberate dance. You sense the warmth building in your back, the soft ache beneath your shoulder blades, and you welcome it as proof of labor well begun. In the corner of the field, the beehives hum low, their wooden frames sheltered beneath a simple roof of thatch. You approach quietly, mindful of the sweetness stirring within. You lift the cover and peer inside, noting the neat, honeyed comb glinting in the light. A thin cloud of bees drifts around you like fine dust, and you breathe their hum as a blessing. You remove a frame with careful hands, brushing away a few strays, and admire the golden richness you will harvest next week. Further on, a plow stands discarded where you left it, its iron share gleaming darker than fresh rain. You lift the beam onto your shoulder and walk to the furrowed earth beyond, where yesterday's scythe work gave way to turned ridges. You slip the harness straps over your arm and guide the oxen forward, feeling their slow strength press against your thigh. You press your heel gently against one flank, whispering a soft word of encouragement, and they shift with you, smoothing the earth into furrows as straight as your own resolve. By mid-morning, you pause to rest beneath the shade of an old elm. You sit on a low bench, untying the satchel to retrieve a small cloth parcel, a chunk of bread and a scrap of cheese pressed in grape leaves. You eat in silence, savoring each bite. The bread is still warm, the cheese faintly tangy, and the grape leaves add a hint of tartness that brightens the flavors. You wash it down with water drawn from a leather flask, tasting the minerals that speak of the deep well by the chapel. As you rise, you brush crumbs from your tunic and gather your tools. The work is far from done, but this moment of rest has replenished you. The sun has shifted higher, and the field shimmers with life. Rows of green, hum of bees, slope of earth, all waiting for your care. You return to the rows, hands sure and steady, eyes intent on the horizon where sky meets soil. The morning's labor continues, each task flowing into the next until the field and you become one slow, breathing entity under the gentle rule of a day that unfolds without hurry, without fanfare, but with purpose as deep as the furrows you leave behind. The sun has climbed to its zenith, draping the world in a soft, hazy light that dances across the field like golden motes. You pause in your work, setting down the spade with gentle care, its blade sinking into the earth as though reluctant to leave. Hunger stirs in your belly. Not a roar, but a steady reminder that nourishment awaits beyond labor. You make your way back toward the cottage, feet treading the familiar track through the swaying grasses. The air is hushed now, save for the distant clatter of a churn in another home and the low murmur of the brook winding through the meadow. You inhale the scent of wild thyme that clings to the breeze, and each breath feels like a benediction, carrying the promise of rest and taste. Inside, the hearth's warmth greets you first. The pot sits heavy on the iron crane, its lid rising, in lazy spirals of steam. You lift it with care, the handle warm against your fingers, and lean over to inhale the aroma. Tender chunks of root vegetables, barley pearls swollen with broth, and flecks of fresh parsley that lend a bright note to the earthiness. You spoon a generous portion into a wooden bowl. The first movement smooth and steady, and feel the heat seep into your palm. Beside the simmering pot, a small loaf of coarse rye rests on a board. You slice through its crust with a whetted knife, the blade biting cleanly into the dense crumb. Each slice reveals ribbons of air pockets, still warm from the oven's glow. You break off a piece, pressing your thumb into its soft center before lifting it to your lips, letting the simple taste of grain settle on your tongue. You settle onto a low stool by the table, bowl in hand. You bring it to your lips and sip, the pottage's warmth spreading into your chest, soothing the ache of morning's toil. The barley is tender, each kernel offering a subtle chew. The vegetables have given themselves up in service to the broth, their sweetness lingering as the liquid washes over your palate. You chew slowly, mindful of each flavor, each texture, honoring the hands that planted and harvested, that cooked and seasoned. A modest cup of ale stands at your elbow, its surface dull with foam. You lift it, feeling the cool weight of the wooden vessel, and tilt it to your lips. The ale's tang is gentle, a mellow counterpoint to the pottage's warmth. You swallow and exhale, letting the duet of flavors settle between you and the silence. Outside, a raven lands on the sill, its black feathers glinting in the sunlight. You catch its eye and break off a small crumb of bread, offering it on your palm. The bird hops forward and pecks delicately, its cries echoing like a tiny bell. You watch until it flies off, carrying your offering into the bright sky. Around you, the world hums with life, paused for this moment of sustenance. A child appears at the doorway, eyes bright, and you break off a sliver of rye and hand it to them without a word. They run back to their corner of the yard, where hens peck at the ground, and you feel the warmth of care blooming in your chest. When the bowl is empty, you place it gently on the table and fold your hands in your lap. The fire's embers glow, faintly, promising the warmth of the evening hearth when your work returns you. You rise and retrieve the wooden ladle, dipping it into the pot once more to fill a smaller bowl for tomorrow's breakfast. Each measured scoop is an act of foresight and respect, ensuring that the next morning's hunger will find its remedy waiting. You wipe your hands on the hem of your tunic, feeling the fabric's rough comfort, then belt your tunic once more and gather your satchel. The sun has begun its descent. The field awaits your return, its rows eager for further tending. You step outside, your body nourished, your spirit steadied by the simple communion of food and rest, and you return to the work that shapes both. You and the land, carrying with you the quiet strength of midday's meal. The sun's arc bends gently westward as you step from the cottage once more, your shadow stretching long across the yard like a silent companion. The air has warmed, carrying the scent of sun-baked grass and the faint sweetness of clover in bloom. You pause at the gate, listening to the village's soft hum, the click of wheels over cobbles, a distant lute's melody drifting from an open window, the murmur of neighbors exchanging news at the well. Returning to the field, you resume tasks left at midday. You examine the young shoots, brushing fingers over their tender leaves to check for pests, tiny green caterpillars or the telltale holes of beetle nibbling. Where you find them, you pinch the intruders between nail and thumb, releasing them into the grass beyond the hedge so that balance may return. You feel the sun's warmth deepen, and a bead of sweat traces down your temple, mingling with the dust of earth and the faint tang of wildflowers. Next, you gather fresh saplings from the coppiced woods, a task that carries both labor and reverence. Each slender shoot is cut at its base with a sharp knife, the slice clean and precise. You bind the saplings into bundles of 5 with twine, their green ends springing like new life in your hands. These will become the framework for the new fence beside the chicken coop, keeping hens safe from fox and weasel as autumn's lean months approach. With bundles strapped to your back, you return to the coop, the birds greeting you with soft clucks and scratching feet. You erect the new stakes in neat intervals, hammering them into the softened soil until they stand firm. The wood smells fresh, sap sweet and bright, and as you weave the horizontal slats, you feel the comforting rhythm of craft, each movement echoing the work of ancestors whose tools were as simple and sure. By late afternoon, you set aside the hammer and stand back to admire your handiwork. The fence holds the sunlight in its grain, the coop's inhabitants safe within, their pen. You gather a handful of fallen grains from beneath the feeders and let the hens peck them up, watching their contented bustle with quiet satisfaction. The world now shifts toward leisure. You lean your back against a sturdy oak at the field's edge, its bark cool and rough beneath your cloak. You retrieve a wooden flute from your satchel, an instrument you play only for yourself, and place its mouthpiece to your lips. The notes you coax from it are soft and undemanding, more wind chant than melody, carrying the hush of leaves and the distant sigh of the river. The tune is one you learned as a child, a lullaby that carries the day's work out of your shoulders and into the air. As the song drifts, a neighbor joins you beneath the shade, offering a flask of cider pressed from last season's apples. You sip and feel the tart sweetness slide down your throat, the cider's chill a gentle contrast to the day's warmth. You share the flask back and forth, your flute's echo mingling with the neighbor's low whistle until both music and drink settle into companionable silence. Above you, the sky deepens into a richer blue, and clouds gather like soft marshmallows, drifting on high. You turn toward home, gathering your flute and satchel, your shoulders lighter for the pause in labor. The village lies before you, its roofs glowing bronze in the late light, and you walk toward it with the easy step of one who has balanced work and rest, each woven into the other like grain and thresh. Dusk drapes itself over the village in layers of indigo and violet, and you step onto the path home as though entering another world, one where shadows lengthen and silence settles like dew. The air has cooled, carrying the hushed chirr of crickets and the distant call of an owl awakening. You pause at the threshold of the cottage, letting the last of the day's light trace the edges of rooftops and hedgerows before it slips away entirely. Inside, the hearth's glow welcomes you. Embers, burning orange beneath ashes, ready to kindle warmth once more. You feed the fire with split logs, each piece laid carefully across the coals, and you cup your hands near the flames, feeling their heat chase the cold from your fingers. The room brightens in gentle waves, as though breathing life back into still air. You turn to the corner where evening's meal awaits. A kettle rests on the crane, water within already whispering toward a boil. You remove it and pour the hot water into a bowl of dried peas and lentils, stirring until the legumes soften and swell. You add a handful of chopped onion and a pinch of salt, letting the mixture simmer until it gleams with hearty promise. The scent, earthy, nourishing, fills the room like a benediction. By the table, you break bread from yesterday's loaf, its crust now softened but still carrying the memory of oven's heat. You tear off a chunk, dipping it into the simmering. Stew. Each bite is a melding of time. Yesterday's harvest, today's work, tonight's rest. You swallow, feeling fullness ease the ache in your back and still the hum of labor in your mind. Outside, lanterns are lit, small iron frames holding tallow candles whose flames waver without wind. You carry one to the door, placing it on the sill so its light spills onto the path. You watch as its glow intersects with the darkness beyond, a beacon for late travelers, a promise that home is open until the stars claim the sky. You settle into your chair, the wood's curves fitting, your shape as though carved just for you. A simple bowl of cider stands at your elbow, its cool sweetness a final note to the day's flavors. You sip slowly, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the distant hymn of frogs in the marsh beyond the fields. If you are inclined, you, read by lantern light, a scrap of scripture, a poem penned by a wandering monk, or perhaps a letter from a friend in another village. The words are gentle, their meaning unfolding softly as you trace each line with a fingertip. Your eyes grow heavy, but you linger a moment longer, honoring the mind's quiet journey before surrendering to rest. When you finally rise, you douse the lantern's flame, its smoke spiraling upward to mingle with the night air, and you tread to your chamber above. The stairs creak underfoot, a final reminder of wood settling in centuries of use. You lift your blanket, woolen, heavy, lined with the down of geese, and slip beneath it, the weight settling across your shoulders like a benediction. You lie, back, arms at your sides, and close your eyes to the world. Outside, the wind sighs through thatch and timber, the owl sings his lone song, and the lantern's glow fades to memory. You feel the day dissolve behind your eyelids. The dawn's hush, the midday warmth, the labor's rhythm, the flute's echo, the hearth's glow. In the quiet dark, you draw a slow breath, and the world tilts gently toward sleep. Your body sinks into the straw mattress, and at the edges of consciousness you carry the senses of the day, the taste of barley, the scent of pine, the touch of calloused hands, into the realm of dreams. And as the night enfolds you completely, you drift without hurry, cradled by the soft cadence of life in this time and place until sleep finds you fully, and the village settles into its silent vigil beneath the starry sky. You awake in your own bed, the soft contour of memory foam, cradling your body in gentle curves. The hum of air through vents replaces the hiss of hearth smoke. Sunlight filters not through thatch but through blinds, precise slats that shift with the simple pull of a cord. Your feet touch carpet instead of rushes, and the floor holds neither chill nor grit. Your morning begins with water at a tap, warm or cold at a whim, flowing without labor into a porcelain basin. No bucket, no trek to the well. You breathe in steam scented with lavender soap, not vinegar, and you trace your reflection in glass, seeing a face framed by modern cloth and accustomed ease rather than linen and wool. The clothes you pull on slide over your skin like water, soft and free of itch. Outside, cars glide silently along paved streets, their engines a distant murmur compared to the clatter of cartwheels and hoofbeats. Streetlights stand tall, their glow automatic at dusk, replacing lanterns you once imagined at cottage thresholds. The air smells faintly of fresh coffee rather than ale or roasting grains. You press a button for elevator instead of climbing. Narrow stairs, and the building hums around you in metal and glass. At work, screens illuminate faces and documents with light that never dims. Communication travels instantly across continents, not by rider or courier, and your words arrive in moments rather than days. You schedule meetings with a tap, not by the tolling of church bells. You summon climate-controlled air with thermostats, control the seasons in microcosm, and step outside into a world that neither freezes nor swelters. Meals unfold with choice you could scarcely imagine, fruits from distant orchards, spices carried across oceans by ships. No longer must you rely on barley and root vegetables, on the limited yield of your own fields. Flavors surprise your palate. Citrus bright as dawn, grains fluffy as cloud, chocolate from faraway rainforests melting like dusk on your tongue. You dine by electric light, never fearing that the next gust will snuff the flame. Yet in this ease you sometimes feel a quiet longing for the old cadence. Days measured by sunrise and hearth fire, work tied to seasons, meals earned by toil. You no longer count on sheep or wheat or timely rain, but on systems and supply chains that hum beyond your sight. You wear garments washed in seconds, not in vats of lye boiled over flame. You rest on mattresses sprung by steel coils, not on straw pressed beneath your weight. Still, there is grace in both worlds. Here you savor comfort and safety you scarcely question. Then you would have savored a crust of bread and the spark of a new day as profound miracles. Now, you sip coffee that arrived by container ship, and you fall asleep to air that flows clean and cool. In both, warmth matters, whether from fire or furnace, from hearth or head, and as you close your eyes, you carry the echo of that distant dawn within you, a reminder that simplicity and wonder can coexist beneath any sky. In this moment of stillness, you consider how far we have come and what we have left behind. Progress has given us medicine that mends bones without bloodletting, antibiotics that chase away fevers once fatal, and tools that shape steel with precision rather than sweat. We speak instantly across oceans, summon light with a flick of a switch, and ride in machines that carry us farther than a lifetime's walk. Yet for all our mastery, there is a quiet ache for rhythms that once grounded us. We no longer rise with roosters or labor by the sun's arc. Our hands, though nimble on keyboards and touchscreens, seldom know the grain of wood or the softness of wool just sheared. We order food with a click, rather than coaxing a spark beneath a cauldron. Our safety nets are woven of technology and policy, not of neighborly ties and daily exchange. In exchange for ease, we have gained freedom of choice. Where to live, how to work, what to wear, what to eat. We can cross continents in hours, learn any subject at our fingertips, record our thoughts for the world to hear. Yet with choice comes noise. So many options that the simple comfort of a single path feels distant. We long sometimes for the clarity of roles defined by necessity, clear boundaries between labor and rest, unquestioned obligations that shaped purpose. We have won longevity, watching children grow to adulthood and caring for elders with tools our ancestors could not imagine. Our cities pulse with innovation, art, education, inclusion. Yet, in the hum of refrigerators and the glow of streetlights, we lose the scent of hearth smoke, the hush of candlelit evenings, the intimacy of whispered stories passed elbow to elbow. We gain security, but we may forfeit wonder. Still, there is beauty in both. We treasure the strides of our healing hands and the convenience of our inventions. We delight in cuisines born of far seas and in songs that span time and culture. We take for granted the flush of a toilet, the warmth of central heat, the comfort of a mattress that remembers our shape, and yet, at dusk, when you dim your screens and draw a blanket around your shoulders, you feel a soft tug toward simplicity. The slow heartbeat of life shaped by seasons, the taste of grain fresh from oven's heat, the resonance of voices singing in close quarters. You realize that progress and tradition need not be rivals, but companions. You can carry a drone's camera and a wooden flute in the same satchel. You can reap digital harvests by day and tend a small garden by night. In the balance of gains and losses, you discover a choice: to embrace what we have become, while honoring what we once were. To lean into comfort without forgetting the magic of scarcity. To move forward with grace, carrying the echoes of straw and stone beneath our modern feet.